Hey guys, welcome back to Ultimate SNS. So today we're looking at a few different things. One, if you remember a while back, we had posted up a video talking about the water shortages out west, and one of the plans that they had to bring water from basically over in the Midwest areas all the way out to the west side of the country. And that sounded like a bad idea to a lot of people in the right areas. But again, they're talking like, well, they're just afraid it's a technological feat. So the idea behind this, guys, is they're now wanting to cut a 52-foot deep trench, okay, all the way from a river source, to bring that across the country. Now, the problem that I see with that, and I am not an educated person when it comes to geology and stuff like that, but what I do know is across this country, we're riddled with earthquake fault lines, okay? So when you start cutting 52 foot of rock out, just a big swath coming across the country, you're cutting across some major earthquake fault lines. Here's a geological survey of this country. Now, how is it somebody sitting down in Florida that doesn't really have a whole lot of education in that can see how this could potentially become a really bad idea? They're already dealing with massive earthquakes out on that side of the country. They're expecting some really majors, sevens, and things like that here in the next few years because of all the crap going on. So now we're just going to just start cutting big swaths of land out. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but understand it's one of those situations where they don't want to give up their way of life, so they want to impede on other people's, and the hell with the consequences. And that's the problem that we see with the left all the time. If you caught the whole town hall meeting when our president was up there calling us extremists and saying that we were the problem, and then he come out the very next day and backed up and then said, oh no one that is part of the Make America Great or Trump supporter is an actual threat. And then he comes back out the very next day and he doubles down on the original comment, which was calling us all a threat and all a bunch of extremists and things like that. Now, is there extremism in this country? Absolutely. Is it on both sides of the aisle? Absolutely it is, whether you're on the right or the left side. If your idea of freedom has to do with causing harm to someone who thinks differently than you, then yes, you are an extremist, folks. That is the way it comes down to it. Now, I am a person who says that I believe in the Lord. I hope everyone will reach that point at time. If you choose not to, that is your choice, but do not come to me with violence because of my beliefs, because I'm not going to come at you with violence because of whatever your beliefs are, which I really don't care. Understand, when we live in this society and we live in this world today, each person has to make a decision of what it is that they believe as a person, okay? And we have a lot of these people that are in what I call the social club of believers, which is where they come in and they start talking about that they're a Christian, and when you start talking to them about their faith and you say, okay, so well, I'd love to hear your testimony, folks. And what happens is it's about, well, they were baptized when they were a baby. Well, understand, baptism is a outward expression of an inward change that has taken place at the moment that we believe, folks. You cannot take a baby and baptize it. There is nothing scriptural behind the Catholic baptism of an infant. There's nothing scriptural about it. Now, if that's something you're into, that's up to you, but understand that baby has to come to a conclusion of its own as it gets older and becomes aware of sin. There is an age of accountability. That is not a physical age of when they reach, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. It's not what it's talking about. When Paul is discussing this age of accountability issue in the New Testament, he simply says that when he was younger, he was born, he was alive. It's talking about an age of accountability when he became aware of the law and aware of what sin is and the repercussions of that sin within the law, the death that happens. It was at that moment that he died. And when he accepted Christ and he came into the fullness of the Lord with salvation, that he was now alive. Why would he then take and bondage himself back with the law and with death? So people need to understand, you need to read your Bible. Get out of these traditional ways of thinking, because tradition is not always right. Just because they've always done it that way doesn't mean that it's right. A lot of those things come from those ancient Roman Catholics. For those who don't know what the Roman Catholic belief is and where it actually stems from, what actually happened was during the early days when Christianity began spreading out of Jerusalem and started going into with the Gentiles and things like that, folks, what happened is the Jewish population that wanted to actually snuff that out couldn't. But they were going in through these violent extremes, and it was to a point where the early believers were hiding in caves and dens and things like that to have services, to come together and talk about what it is that God's doing. Now, church back then is not like churches nowadays, where we have the social club and we have the cappuccino stands and the band and the smoke and fog machines and the cool strobe lights and all that stuff. That is not church. That, in fact, is what the Old Testament talks about when it says that the noise, that all of it was coming as noise to the Lord's ear. That's what we're seeing with that. To have church, if you want to call it that, is where a group of believers, 2 or 3 are gathered. It says in there the presence of the Lord will be. That is what it is to gather. And we will be getting back to that at some point, folks. Understand that, because these main churches and things, you're going to start seeing where some of them are being closed up, but some certain types of religions are going to be allowed to remain in their congregation halls. And those are the ones that you're going to be able to spot pretty quick as the synagogue of Satan. So on the more on that, one of the things I thought was interesting is they're talking about now this extremist religious group that is coming out, and it's called Christian nationalism. And is it a dangerous thing? Well, yes, it is a dangerous thing, because these are the kind of crazies that go out and they bomb buildings and things like that, and they cause destruction and they cause harm, physical harm. That is not what we are called to do. Just as when Jesus was being taken from the Garden of Gethsemane and Peter raised his sword and cut off an ear, the Lord rebuked him for that. Okay, he says, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. He placed the ear back on the soldier's head and rebuked him from that. And we're also told that in the book of Revelation. We're not told to go out and act in violence. So if that is your idea and that is your mentality of Christianity, then you have missed the mark, folks, completely. In a world that is full of violence, we're supposed to be apart from the world. How can you tell us apart? Because we do not resolve our differences through violence. We resolve it through prayer. And it tells us that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, which should tell you that we are on a spiritual battle, folks. What gets me is the fact that there's so many nut jobs out there that are at a second. Yeah, are they extremists? They're lunatics as far as I'm concerned. Now, if you have a true faith and a true belief, and understand, if you don't know if you do or not, chances are you'll probably, if you're sitting there going, well, am I really saved? Understand, if you believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and you believe that he was laid to rest, that he died for our sins, was laid to rest, and rose on that third day, and he's coming back for his church, you are a Christian. Now, where do we get this mentality of, well, maybe you're not a good enough Christian? A lot of that is coming from people who, back in the days when the Christian church was first forming and a lot of the Jewish population come in, they started trying to hammer those early believers with laws. And it was causing a lot of division, a lot of conflict. So what happened is Rome finally come in, they sacked Jerusalem, they scattered everybody out to the winds, and then they go, okay, well, the best way to rule a nation is to rule them through what? Through their religion. So they created their own the Roman Catholic Church. They placed their own leaders in there. The Roman Catholic Church was not formed by Peter. He was dead long before that actually had come up. He had been crucified upside down on a cross. That was not him as the first pope, folks. Understand that. The Lord never died to create a religion. There was plenty of them around. He died to open up and to defeat death and hell. That is what we came for. And it could not remain in that grave because he had no sin, and he resurrected, and he holds the keys of power of death and hell. He has defeated all things, and he will come back one day. And that's what we look for, is that blessed hope. So in the days ahead, my recommendation to you is keep your faith deep rooted in the Lord. Stop listening to these crazies that are out there wanting to go into violent realms and stuff. I am not telling you that you cannot defend your life. Okay, understand there is a difference between true self-defense and people just wanting to go out and cause a bunch of problems. If someone breaks in your home and they're raping your wife or something like that, then yes, you have a right to take that. You have a right to defend your family. If you don't, then you're a freaking coward. And it says in the Bible that God despises the coward. So yes, there are times when you will have to go into self-defense. But understand, if it is persecution because of your faith in the Lord, at that point we're supposed to stand, we're supposed to take it. We're supposed to count it a blessing that we were chosen to go through that persecution. So you have to look at it from two: are you physically defending your life, or are you going in a violent way to defend your faith? If you're going to go into a violent to defend your faith, then you've missed the mark, and maybe your faith isn't as strong as you thought it was. So that's my opinion on the topic, guys. I hope everyone's having a great day. And man, again, be getting your food the best way you can. Don't be paying attention to these people like, oh, there's plenty. Look around for yourself. You're seeing that the stores are nowhere near as full as they used to be. Now they're making the aisles narrower. They're making the spots smaller to make it look like it's okay and there's plenty of food. But remember back when frozen chicken was in these big bins, and they'd be, 5, 6, 7, 8 foot long bins full of chicken bags and stuff. And now you're seeing these little bitty bays, and it might be 2 or 3 bags wide because there's not a lot of chickens. So my recommendation: raise your chickens. Quail are a great way to do things as well. It doesn't take a lot of food. The problem with quail is you need to start raising your own food sources and stuff, which would be like your millets and stuff. If you're not raising that stuff, when all of this comes to a head and you're no longer able to run up to the store to pick up some feed, that's where the chickens come into hand. You butcher out your quail, you have your chickens and stuff, but they will free range. You will have to watch them to ensure that they're not getting eaten by predators and stuff, depending on the areas that you're at, or stolen, because understand, when food becomes scarce, that's when the thieves come out as well. So everyone have a wonderful day. We're going to hop off here.